let's go to our good friend. Haven't heard from her in a while. It's been too long. A couple times she's been out or she's been ill, but now she's better and ready to go. Joining us now from Americans for Prosperity Virginia chapter, their deputy director, Lauren Toomay. Lauren, good to have you, man.
Good morning, John. Nice to be back on.
I know. So, Lauren, what do you think about all these shenanigans going on in Virginia, your beloved now home state, Commonwealth?
That's right. That is it, my beloved Commonwealth. I absolutely love it. You're not getting me back up to Massachusetts. So, it's definitely been a crazy year, just, kind of snowballing into more crazy throughout session. And we were not necessarily worried, but kind of curious about how that was going to look as far as doing actual policy work, which is what the General Assembly, what the executive branch is elected to do. And we were pretty pleased with the outcomes for, one of our priority initiatives, our telemedicine bill, which breaks down the state's barriers to telemedicine providers in our state, passed unanimously, and the governor is set to sign that at the end of March. Additionally, our physician's assistant bill, which is pretty similar to the bill that we had last year, which expands scope of practice for nurse practitioners, also went straight through. So that was pretty great. There were some optimistic policy wins for Virginians in 2019, and also that the tax reform bill we actually ended up coming around to supporting because it ended up being a great bill, and Virginians are going to receive, they're going to get their tax money back from the federal tax reform, I think, in October. So I know as a Virginian myself, I'm personally looking forward to that. And what's great with these items that I'm talking about is they genuinely affect Virginians at the minute that they're signed. So a lot of times it kind of takes a while to see how some things work, how some things don't work, and then it's kind of forgotten. But, as soon as the governor signs the tax reform bill, come October, I believe single folks will get a $100 check. Families will get a $200 check back from their federal tax, from the federal tax cuts. As far as telemedicine goes, doctors will be reimbursed immediately for seeing virtual telemedicine patients the same way as they would for in-person. So the incentives immediately will change, and that will help break down barriers for all Virginians in regards to access to care, economic freedom. I mean, so there was a couple of bright lights. It was hard to kind of get that out in the midst of everything. So I'm glad to be on speaking with you. But we did have some really huge policy wins this session that we're very pleased with.
Well, you guys did a great job this session. And, some of the things that you were working on, Lauren, for Americans for Prosperity Virginia chapter were not like the most high-profile items. And that's what makes your organization so effective.
That's
because
right.
Sometimes you have to go behind the scenes, you have to dig a little bit and get things done that, it's not in the headlines of the news every day. It's not the so-called sexy legislation or project,
right?
Right?
Right. It's good things that actually help people. And, sometimes, like you said, they're not the hot button issues, but like I said, upon them passing, tangibly will change the lives of many Virginians. So we were happy to work on that. And in both of those issues that passed in a bipartisan manner, even in the midst of the dynamic and the culture and everything that has been, for lack of a better term, on fire in Richmond, right? Bipartisan support. The one that we did not get through was our driver's license suspension bill. It did get further along than previous years, but still hitting roadblocks with that. So our organization's mission, throughout the spring and summer is to really do some heavy issue education and outreach on these issues that one, that have passed, two, that, we're going to need to work on again next session. So very exciting stuff.
Okay, so Lauren Toomay, the Deputy Director of Americans for Prosperity Virginia chapter, tell us about your involvement with You've Got to Be Happy, and you mentioned earlier about the tax cut plan. I thought this was one of the best accomplishments that the Republicans made there in the majority, is they've aligned the tax code for Virginia with the Trump federal tax plan starting in 2019. So you can't do it in 18.
Right.
And I thought it was smart because it was just too much confusion. And by the time they got it passed, you've already done your taxes. But they're simply going to give a rebate back. So if you're a single filer, bang, you get 110. If you're a family filer, you get 220. You're going to get a check back in, I think, October. And that's kind of like an average of what you would get back. So that's done. They fixed 18. Then they go ahead to 19, double the deduction for single, doubled it for family, and took the cap off of the deduction for if you decide to do that. So they've aligned the tax codes. You guys have to be ecstatic about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think last time I was on the show and we were speaking about it, there were two bills. It was the House and the Senate bill.
Right.
And neither one of them were quite in a place at that point that we could really get behind and support. And the Senate one, looked the most optimistic, and, worked under the dome to say things, these are, conformity is very important, and conformity to the highest degree. So we were very pleased when the Senate came out with the plan that they had, and were able to throw our support behind it. And again, we're thrilled to see it pass. And, personally, I'm very, very thrilled for my rebate coming in October.
I know. You get $110. I'm a family. I get $220. It's just going to show in the mail. I'm already to do something with that money. But look, you guys have done a great job this session under the radar screen. Not always. There's been other sessions where you've been very, very much in the forefront, Medicaid expansion and things of that nature. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America. Good to have you with us. We're with Lauren Toomay. She's the Deputy Director for Americans for Prosperity, Virginia chapter. Okay, so 2019 session, except for the veto session, which I think is April 3rd, I believe. Except for veto day. And by the way, we'll be live in Tim Hugo's office. So be sure and put that on your calendar. Be there for us. That's going to be a fun day. We're going to be live there.
Yeah.
And so Americans for Prosperity, Virginia, what are you doing between now and April? You got about 4 weeks before the veto session comes. What are you guys working on?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, John. As you know, our organization is a permanent infrastructure in Virginia. So once session's over, once elections are over, once any type of programming is over, we're on to the next thing, and we're a permanent fixture here. So I'm glad that you asked that. For next session, we're going to start looking a little bit at COPN reform. Now, you and I have talked about this from the AFP side, but underneath the AFP brand is a brand called Concerned Veterans for America. And similar to the federal tax code that, Virginians were in jeopardy of not receiving the benefits from that, depending on what the tax plan was this session. What happens with COPN for veterans, all of the great work that the Trump administration has done on VA choice, VA reform, the VA Mission Act, kind of gets unraveled at the state level with this certificate of public need, especially if you're a veteran, say, in Southwest Virginia with a specialty condition and you have your VA choice to go outside of the VA healthcare system. However, the nearest hospital that can actually serve you and treat you for adequate care is still 2.5 hours away because of that that certificate of public need. So we're going to be really engaging our veterans community on the Concerned Veterans for America side, educating them about that issue, and we'll be engaging in that next session from the veterans' perspective. On the AFP side, and as well as the Libre initiative, the Libre Hispanic Freedom brand that we have also under AFP, it's going to be a lot of issue education about telemedicine and health innovation. You'll see lots of things like hack your healthcare, 10 ways that you can go that you don't have to go to the doctor this flu season. And that'll be utilizing telemedicine and the services that will now be available because of this bipartisan legislation that passed this session, as well as educating on, more of that common sense criminal justice reform outreach that, we had this year with our driver's license suspension bill. You and I both agree it kind of seems like a common sense practice to do away with suspending people's license for unpaid court fees, but, that isn't necessarily the consensus. So we have to do some ID work. We have to kind of dig in as to where people are coming from with this. And a lot of times it just takes more education. I will say on that bill in particular, the majority of people we talk about say, oh my gosh, that's absolutely ridiculous. We should not be doing that. So it's a lot of issue education, a lot of outreach within our regions across the state. We cover all four corners, all 4 points of Virginia. So we are going to be out there in full effect educating and activating our activists for throughout the spring and summer and for the fall, and to get them ready for next session. It's a quick session in Richmond. As you know, it's very, very quick. So you really have to be ready to go come January. You have to do all of that education beforehand, because if you're learning while you're going, and that goes for, our staff as well, you're not going to get the outcomes you want because it just moves too quickly. So very excited about, utilizing the brands to educate and activate our activists across the state.
So, Lauren, tell me about your organization now in Virginia. I know it's grown substantially. Mm-hmm. I just want to get the numbers straight. How many offices do you now have in Virginia?
We have, we have Virginia Beach, Richmond, out in Charlottesville, Northern Virginia. We have 5 field offices.
So you've got you got 5 offices, and about how many full and part-time people?
All of our entire team is full-time. We have 15 staff total, and growing.
So you've got 15 staff plus in Virginia. I just want to give it a comparison so our audience understands this, okay?
Sure.
So, and this is why I always say that Americans for Prosperity really is the #1 grassroots organization in Virginia. Now, how many total activists in Virginia do you have?
Total activists that engage with us on a consistent basis, folks that are coming to the Capitol every week to lobby. You'll notice that throughout session. We do a lobby day, but our activists are in the Capitol every single week, whether it's 5 of them, 10 of them, going to talk to their legislators. We find that permanent presence is really helpful, and they want to be there. They want to be talking to their lawmakers about these things that are important to them. So folks that actually take action with us across the state between Libre, AFP, and CVA would be a couple hundred. As far as anyone in Virginia who's ever taken an action with us, whether that's sending a letter to a legislator, whether that's signing a petition, whether that's making phone calls or doing a patch-through call, that number is over 400,000.
So that's the thing. I mean, technically, you've got 400,000 people that you can activate on any given day. That's the power of what you have. 15 staff and growing. And when we talk about the influence you have in Virginia, what's important for people to understand is, and I've said this over and over because people have called me and say to me, what's the Republican Party of Virginia doing? And it's like, there is no Republican Party of Virginia. I mean, it's not, this is not a knock on Jack Wilson or John Finley, the executive director. It's got nothing to do with that. This is just reality. Okay, there's no party. It's an office with 3 people in it. One of them answers the phone. So there is no party. It's a postal permit. So if you want to get activists out and you want to get something done, and it's on the conservative side in Virginia, you got one option, and that's AFP. That's it. That's the only option that you have. So if you're thinking about giving a donation to someone or getting involved as a donor or an activist, AFP Virginia is where you want to go, because that's critical mass. They can actually move the needle on stuff. And it's a huge organization that you guys have that basically started not that long ago from bottom up scratch. And when you have the ability, Lauren, to activate up to 400,000 people on a given issue that they might feel strongly about, I mean, that's a massive number. And that is the soul of what your grassroots organization is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, I mentioned it earlier, we're a permanent fixture in Virginia. So it's not the kind of in and out the way campaigns are, or even the way some organizations are when they're focused on one issue, right? They're one issue, they get what they want done, and that's the end of it. We're focused on long-term breaking down barriers for Virginians, right? There's never going to be a finish line where our work is done, and we're willing to stand with anybody to do right. On our telemedicine bill, we had co-patrons that were Democrats. Our chief patron was Terry Kilgore, who we were strongly against last year in the Medicaid expansion fight. But at the end of the day, if you're going to do good work to improve the lives of Virginians, we want to be on board with that. We want to be for, in the big world of no and negativity and what Richmond looks like this year, we want to be the group that's for things that will actively change people's lives. And we're finding that, you know, our staff is way more enthused about that, and our activists have been, you know, almost needing that type of fulfillment, right? Like, it's always fine to be the no person and shoot down bad things, but what can we be for? What can we actually do? Let's get off the defense and let's really be proactive in changing the lives of Virginians. And we saw this session that that's a good play, and that works. That gives positive outcomes across the state. So, yeah, absolutely. There's so many ways to get involved with us. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, AFP Virginia on Facebook, AFP VA on Twitter, and we are also on Instagram now, AFP VA on Instagram. So tons of ways to get involved across the state. If you are anywhere in Virginia, you can be involved through a field office, or we also have ways to get folks involved remotely as well. So really jumping on that innovation bandwagon, not only for Virginians, but the way we can activate folks. Very exciting. Well,
Lauren Toomay, we love what you're doing, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there's things that we have to fight, and, you know, and there's some things you feel strongly about. You have to say no, but then what really motivates people is, yes, here's what we can do. Here's what can have a positive impact on your life. And you've done that. And so, and your example of Terry Kilgore, by the way, he's with us at 9:35 today. House of Delegates member Terry Kilgore. It's a great example. It's the way we live here. It's, you know what? You're my enemy today. You're my friend tomorrow, right? So when the battle's over, when the nomination's over, when the election's over, I turn the page. You just got to move on. And those of us who can do that, who have the ability, like you just outlined, you know, you fought Terry Kilgore in 2018 on Medicaid expansion. He was your number one guy you were fighting. 2019 on telemed, he becomes your number one ally.
Yeah, he was the chief patron. It was his bill. And
number one ally.
We've continuously given him kudos for that bill, but also the reason that bill went through so sweepingly as well is we had another bill in the Senate that was exactly like it with Ben Chapin. Again, someone who voted against us on Medicaid expansion. But when there's opportunity there, it's really silly to kind of, you know, keep your axe grinding, right?
You got to turn the page.
Making life better for Virginia.
That attitude, Lauren, that you have breathed into the Virginia organization is really going to serve you well, because that's exactly what I do. Yeah. I mean, I'm, you know, we don't endorse a lot of candidates, but sometimes we do, and people get very upset. But as soon as the returns are in at midnight, we turn the page and start over. And it doesn't matter, because that was then and this is now. Lauren, I got to go. I'm out of time. I really want to thank you for your great session, your excellent work. We need to have you on a weekly basis. John Fredericks Radio Network. Curtis L is coming up. Stay with us.